all this technology is fighting what our natural instincts want, right?
Did you watch Star Trek ever?
Oh, yeah.
There's this assumption that we are these logical creatures who wish to live long and prosper, and we do it through the most logical, thoughtful way. But we're not Spock. We're the humans. We're Kirk, right? We're Bill Shatner falling in love with some green skin chick and making all sorts of irrational, crazy decisions, which is what makes the human experience so wonderful and wild and confusing and crazy and hard to pin down.
I am a Trekkie. Spock was also half human. And a lot of those stories, not to nerd out too much. Welcome to Hit Pause. I'm Star Price. Are we becoming fed up with tech entering every aspect of our lives? We may appreciate the convenience, but are we becoming disconnected from what makes us human? What happened to real life? My guest today is David Sax, the author of the bestseller The Revenge of Analog and the recent The Future is Analog. David, thanks for joining us. So what is analog, the term? What is your definition of it?
The way I've defined it sort of broadly in the books that I've written and the work that I've done over the past 2 decades is places, things, relationships, experiences that are anchored in the real physical tactile world and are not driven by or governed by digital technology, not by ones and zeros. So you're talking about listening to a physical record, going to an actual concert, reading a book in paper versus an ebook, taking a photograph on a film camera versus on a digital camera or a smartphone that's again using that digital technology. And then there's certain areas where it changes based upon the new technology. So 20 years ago, nobody would have said, oh, someone listening to an MP3 player, with wired headphones is analog. But now a lot of people refer to it as that because compared to streaming, something like that, or something like a CD player, for example, is more analog because it requires this physical thing, or it's limited in a way that, Spotify isn't.
You write in your book, and I quote, "What if we define the future not by what we could theoretically build with digital technology, but by what we actually want as humans?" So all this technology is fighting what our natural instincts want, right?
Yes and no. I mean, I think it depends. Let's take something as simple as a digital camera, right? Talking about the early 2000s, this technology comes out and becomes widely available. All of a sudden you were able to take an unlimited or nearly unlimited number of pictures, where before you could take 24 or 36 and each roll that you took cost, $5-10 to buy the film and another $5 to $10 to develop. And you go to the place with the hut in the mall and and you wait 2 weeks and you throw a bunch out and you're like, what the hell am I doing with these negatives? Yada, yada, yada. Right. So that was something that we were working on and creating. And when everyone got it, was like, wow, this is amazing. Took my film camera. I think I sold it or gave it to a girlfriend or something at the time. And that was it. No looking back. But then after a while, there were things that we noticed were missing from that experience, or that experience didn't deliver everything we wanted. And one of them was tactility. It felt great to hold a picture in your hand. What people have sort of then have rediscovered, and this is sort of behind this revenge of analog, as I called it, is, hey, what if we just took that old film camera and started using it again? And wow, there's people actually making film again, and it's available once more. And, I'm sending my kids to summer camp on Sunday, overnight camp for a month. And I'm buying them Fujifilm Instax film for the Fujifilm cameras. And they want disposable 35 millimeter cameras as well. And they're bringing their little digital cameras, right?
So there can be a balance is what you're saying.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I know very, very few people who live either an entirely digital existence where they don't want to go anywhere, see anything, do anything, interact with anything in this sort of real world, and they live sealed off in some bubble where the apps are just giving them everything they want. Or people who completely reject digital technology, do not use a phone, do not have an email address, are on absolutely no digital services whatsoever. Most people are trying to figure out the right balance. the false narrative and the false promise that we got into was at the advent of the sort of digital era we're in now. Well, let's just say, the 20th century digital, right? When we had universal access across the developed world and now the developing world to high-speed internet, mobile phones. So the internet now can go everywhere with you. It's not tied to a thing. There was this assumption and this narrative that was told from the people who created the technology, the people who were selling the technology, and others, that this was it. We had been predicting this Star Trekking future all these years, and finally it had arrived. You can take your phone and you can do anything with it. You can watch every movie, listen to every single thing, do all your work, have every single meeting. You never need to step into a movie theater, a concert hall, an office, a school ever again if you wanted. You don't need to go to a restaurant. They'll deliver all that stuff right to your door. You just tap, 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 tap. And there was this assumption like, this is where it's going. This was the future that we're heading to. But most of us experienced the need for something other than that after a while, right? You can only get so much from this flat little piece of glass. We all experienced it during the sort of heady months of COVID in March of 2020, where you're like, hey, isn't this amazing? We can do this little podcast talk and we're in a square, and then I'm going to go to another square and have a cocktail with my friend, and then another square and I'm going to go take a course, and then another square I'm going to like watch, I'm going to watch a movie on the next square and then go back to the other. Like, it's like Hollywood squares from hell. And after, 2 weeks of this, everyone's like, get me the hell out of here. It's like this. I need more than this.
I think that surprised a lot of people, don't you think? I mean, that feeling that's come on, and lately it's really kind of taken off, that all this cool technology that gives me all this, access to things and convenience, it doesn't make me feel so good.
We are human beings. We are not pieces of technology. We are animals. At the end of the day, we are social creatures. That's what defines us. And our existence on this crazy ass planet has been defined by the way we interact with it, which is with all of our bodies and all of our minds and all of our emotions. And this square here, this rectangle, only taps into a very small percentage of that. You are interacting with your eyeballs and your ears and your fingertips, and you're interacting with a portion of your ears and a very narrow range of your sight, and just the sort of tips of your finger on a very smooth, flat surface, or a keyboard, a slightly less smooth, flat surface, right? But our entire beings have evolved to move around in the world and interact with people with our eyes and our noses and our bodies and our tongues and the senses that we have acquired over tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of years of evolution. That's what gives us information. That's what gives us knowledge. That's what gives us a sense of meaning and community and place and things like joy, right? And there is just a limited amount of joy you can have looking at your screen. I mean, give me one, I'm challenging you here, Star. Give me one memory you have from a screen.
I kind of had a feeling you were going to say that. Well, it's really, really hard. I mean, yeah, I get more out of meeting a friend for a cup of coffee and talking about seemingly nothing than spending an hour with somebody on no offense, spending an hour with somebody on a Zoom. There's just that weird human connection thing that people need and feel.
I want to pick up on your word weird here, because it's this counter narrative that we're like, yeah, it's wild. Like how how this is, like, why is that? And it just speaks to the false belief and sort of messianic ideal that we had absorbed around this logic of digital technology and its creators, and the sort of inevitability of technological superiority, right? Which is that, logically, it makes the most sense economically, physically, in terms of energy or whatever, to do stuff like this, to do things in this way. This was the sort of narrative of COVID, right? That makes the most logical sense. It makes the most logical sense to take photos on your phone or a digital camera. The amount of chemicals in the process and the money and whatever, the waste involved in using film, it's crazy, right? Like you just got a chip and you tick, 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 and like you can do unlimited things and it's incredible. But it's kind of this strange confusion of who humans are. So did you watch Star Trek ever?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I'm not talking TNG. I'm talking the original, right? There's this assumption that we are all Vulcans, that we're Spock, that we are these logical creatures who wish to live long and prosper, and we do it through the most logical, thoughtful way. But we're not Spock. We're the humans. We're Kirk, right? We're Bill Shatner falling in love with some green skin chick and, screaming his heart out on something and making all sorts of irrational, crazy decisions, which is what makes the human experience so wonderful and wild and confusing and crazy and hard to pin down.
I am a Trekkie. So going back to your Star Trek analogy, Spock was also half human. And a lot of those stories, not to nerd out too much, but a lot of those stories were about him realizing that the human side of him was giving him much more of a rewarding experience in life than the logical side. I can understand why people my age or your age, want to go back, they remember what it was like before computers or before cell phones or whatever. But what's interesting, isn't it true that this whole, Gen Z is what's kind of, really trying to embrace it because they never had it growing up, in terms of like riding their bikes all day and not coming home until nighttime and all those kind of romantic versions of the analog days. It's interesting 100%. That they want it.
Yeah, it has been and has always been youth driven, right? First, it was the millennials and maybe some of the older Gen Xers like myself. Now it is the Zs and I guess even the little baby alphas. Why is that? Why is it that my kids who are 13 and 9 years old both want film cameras for summer camp, right? My daughter's still begging for a phone. She'll probably get one next year. But why is that something that they want? Why do they like going to plays and going to movies and doing these things that aren't just something on a screen? Well, one is, again, what I taught. They're human. So they're going to respond to things that are tactile and physical in the same way that we are. There's just more sensory reward there. But the other for them is that, this isn't special. There's nothing special about this, right? It was there when they were born. It's been there their whole lives. They have no magical association with it appearing as this incredible thing that they're still in awe and wonder of. If someone's only ever heard music recorded and then you take them to a concert, you're like, oh no, this is live music. This is the real deal, right? Regardless of what their background is, the totality of that experience is intoxicating.
Yeah. I have a Kindle. It's a different experience, and I really treasure the tactile feeling of a book in my hand. People were saying, Barnes and Noble and these chain bookstores are going to be gone. Now that the Kindle is here, now that the internet is here, whatever, they'll all vanish. And for a while, it looked like they were hurting bad, right? But now they're surging again. So people are kind of trying to reconnect with that tactile experience, right?
Books are a really interesting marker of this because they are the first category that was truly disrupted, I guess, with music by, digital technology. The Amazon Kindle came out in 2009 and it came out and very quickly, 10% of the book market in North America went to ebook sales. Almost 2 decades later, can you guess what percentage of most books are sold as ebooks?
I would say 15 to 20.
That's pretty. You're actually, most people guess much higher, but yeah, it's around 10%, right? It hasn't really moved. What's happened is there's a 10% of ebooks and then another 10% of audiobooks now, and then the rest is paper. And they have done studies and surveys and all sorts of look about and things about why people like paper books more. And do you know what the number one reason is?
For me, I would say it's as simple as being able to dog ear a page when I want to stop.
Yeah. The tactile, physical, analog sense of progress. So there's that, smell and touch are the top two.
Plus, you can see a book on your shelf. You can see it, and you go, "Oh yeah, I read that book a couple years ago."
I'm looking at a bookshelf right now, and out of the corner of the left side of my eye, and it's my books from all my book club books that we've read over the course of 10 years, and they're all sort of lined up here. So there's all these things, again, information that's out there in the world that it only exists in some virtual context.
One of the joys of, going to a bookstore, going to a record store, going to the movies is that it extends the whole experience. I mean, if I want to read a book, I can get it on Kindle and I'm reading it in 30 seconds. If I want to watch a movie that's streaming, I can get it in 30. There's no anticipation. If someone says, "Hey, have you heard the latest album from so-and-so?" It's on my Spotify in seconds. But not to wax too nostalgically, but you'd go to the record store, and that was a journey, and you were excited because you wanted to hear the new album from your favorite group. You'd find the album, you'd take it home, you'd take the plastic off, you'd smell that album cover, you'd look at all the artwork. It would open, and it would be like a discovery, the liner notes. So it was a whole kind of experience of finding it, a ritual. Yeah, and books are the same thing. Going to the bookstore, picking it up. Do you like how it feels in your hand? And the smell.
Do a lot of people buy books on Amazon? Yes, they make up, 30-something% of the book retail market. But why have the bookstores continued to grow and thrive? Because it's an enjoyable experience. It's something that is a pleasure. When you go in a bookstore, especially with a family, like everybody can run in their different direction and go and explore and talk to the staff there and discover and find out things that is being done without an algorithm. It's being done by individual taste and choice and the randomness of seeing something with your eyes or touching something with your hands or, like you said, feeling it. No, this book feels right for me.
What do you think about social media? When it started, it was like, this is the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
But now even young people are realizing it's kind of soulless, right?
Social media began as, hey, wouldn't it be incredible to connect all of humanity in a way and have this wonderful conversation where we bring all these people together? Yeah. And then along came Facebook. And then it was like, hey, we really got to figure out how to make some money. It's like, oh, well, we'll just study what gets people to engage more. Oh, okay. It's hatred, it's fights, it's racism, misinformation and lies. That does really well. Also sex, drugs, rock and roll. Mm-hmm. And they're like, yeah, push that. Just push that stuff. And so when people are, surprised, like, oh, young people are trying to get off social media. No shit. Like, it's.
What about internet dating? That seems to have cooled off. And there's now a whole craze to meet people more, analog-ish.
Analog-like, yeah.
Yeah, trivia nights and bars and running clubs and so forth. And people just burned out on the whole internet dating thing, and it's dropping, right?
I think the people who are burning out on that have tried it, have done it. Someone described it to me as it's turning on a fire hose of humans. Right? Like, you're like, okay, I think I want to meet someone. Whoa! You're like, oh gosh, okay, whoa, like slow down, and it becomes very transactional, which is not what people want out of relationships. If you're looking for love, you want to connect with people on that deeper level. Like, oh, well, maybe if I just go somewhere. No, I know a lot of people who have met, fallen in love, married, kids, 20 years later, and they met online. And I know people who bet the old fashioned analog way. Again, it's not either or, right? That's this false belief that was like, well, now that people are doing this, they'll never go meet in a bar or a party or whatever. Like, or there'll be no need for matchmakers or no need for singles nights or whatever. And it's like, no. Like, you need all these things.
Do what's right for you.
Yeah. And if you meet the love of your life by doing that, mazel tov.
It's kind of interesting that all this technology led to, people being more disconnected from each other and more isolated, right? And so they turned to the technology for internet dating to try to connect again. And they realized, I just got to get out of this whole system here and just get to something more touchy-feely.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of that. There's a lot of platforms and places like Meetup or Facebook groups, right? Talk about one of the positive sides of Facebook that, tell people where to go and get them out and give them opportunities to do these things. And now people are talking about using AI for that. And if you could do an AI and it'll tell you where to go and it'll connect you with people. And there's apps where it'll connect you with the lunch date or whatever. But I think part of it is just relearning how to be social. I mean, there's an entire generation of people who, especially because of the pandemic and maybe working remotely or studying remotely, really not so much lost the ability to connect with other human beings, to meet people, to talk to people, but forgot it. That muscle atrophied. People are like, oh yeah, better get back out there. And then when they do, yes, there's some anxiety because it's hard. It's hard to go up to someone in a bar, at an office, at a conference, at a concert, in a bookstore, and be like, excuse me, introduce yourself. Hi, I'm David. That's tough. It's a lot easier to just click, reduce, do the thing. And if it doesn't work out, you just power down. Right. But we need that. It's essential to who we are as humans, as creatures, to our experience.
People drop this word all the time in conversations, and I hate this word and all that it means, and that's algorithm. This show, this episode, will be viewed by people who are delivered it, who get this episode delivered to them by the algorithm, because the algorithm has decided that they might be interested in this episode. Whereas the algorithm might not even put this episode in front of people who have never shown any interest in anything close to this. Someone who's just interested in sports or interested in whatever.
Enjoy it.
But may
enjoy it. Exactly.
And why do we give in to the algorithm?
Because it promises an easy answer. It promises an easy answer to the things we want. It promises the illusion of a simple answer to what we need. Just because I saw that one movie about a dolphin, I don't need to see 100 other movies about a dolphin. Right? It just happened to be that one particular movie about that one particular dolphin.
Right.
It's a math equation, and it reduces us to a mathematical answer.
How do we get around that?
We move away from the equation. We get out there and we make choices on our own, and we take risks. And maybe it's something great, and maybe it isn't. Maybe it sucks, but at least you've taken that chance, and you develop and build up the muscles of your own taste.
What about loneliness, this whole loneliness epidemic that people talk about? Do you think that's connected directly to this kind of digital world that we're living in?
Oh, 100%. 100%. I mean, I know there was a study that just came out in recent weeks, and it looked at declining fertility rates and declining rates of sex. And, it because of the way they were able to parse certain data sets from different countries in the world, it was like very directly linked to the release of the iPhone in 2007. That has real social consequences. That has real consequences for societal health. It has real consequences for individual health. It has real consequences for family health. It has consequences for fertility and the sort of underpinnings of the entire social contract and everything that we stand for. The more time you spend looking at this little rectangle of bright glass, the less time you're going to spend with other people. The less time you're going to spend with other people, the less happy you're going to be.
It's hard. I mean, all this technology brings so much convenience and everything at your fingertips immediately. Anything you want to know is immediately attainable. How do we tell people, you don't need to know all that. You don't need to have that much information.
Yeah. Well, I think there's different ways, right? One is something like school. The evidence is growing and growing and around the world, and very indisputable that the more digital technology you put into the hands of children in schools, the worse the outcomes are. And so schools around the world need to take a very hard and firm look at what that is, what they want, and how to change that, and how to regulate and use technology in schools, digital technology in schools, in limited but effective ways. You want to teach kids how to use computers, but you don't need to use computers to teach them how to do everything, right? So there's that. There's sort of putting fences around. There's putting fences around it in your personal life. When we are eating at the table, we do not have our phones or devices out, right? That's like a pretty basic rule that, again, for a lot of people is hard to deal with. The thing about the analog stuff that's been, driving it, and the thing that's cool about it is it's stuff that people genuinely are choosing to do. Nobody has to buy a record player. Nobody has to go out to a bookstore. Nobody has to play board games. Nobody has to get a film camera. Nobody has to go on sort of, a blind date event versus the thing. They're choosing to, and they're choosing to do it because it's something they actually want. And I think if we can, allow ourselves to indulge in those behaviors that may seem indulgent or may seem, old fashioned or whatever, then we're already building up the thing to sort of to make that behavior something that's acceptable and a part of our lives, right? If you build in a time, whether it's on the weekend or at nights when you don't have your phone, you do other things, and you know what those other things are going to be. It's family game night. We're going to listen to records night. We're going to go out for a walk. We're going to go play baseball or soccer outside or whatever. Then like you've filled that time that otherwise you would have just done this. And I think that's the problem, right? There is this notion that you find actually on social media of like, it's going to be an analog summer, everybody, you're going to put down your phones and then you're just going to like sit on a dock on a mountain lake and meditate. Like, no, God, no. Like, what are you going to do in that time when you're not doing it? Like, you better fill that with some good shit. And that's what you have to do. So you're like, okay, I want to be on my phone less. Let's just say that's a basic table stakes thing, right? What am I doing? What am I going to do in that time that I'm not on my phone? Because if I'm just sitting around and I'm bored, I'm going to pick up that phone. And I do. I'm as guilty as anyone.
Just when we're getting a handle, perhaps, on controlling our iPhone or our phone usage, and just where we're getting a handle on some of this, digital stuff that's been overwhelming us, here comes AI.
Here come the Terminators.
Yeah, which is going to, if you believe all the, I did an episode on AI with this, anti-AI guy, and it like scared the shit out of me. Right. And it's crazy. So it's going to infiltrate every aspect of our life, and it is the digital world. You run amok.
Well, let's just take a step back and think about what we're talking about with AI. So there's, people will talk about the sort of like the singularity, the general AI, this sort of super intelligence that will be our new god or destructor or whatever. Fine, whatever. Mm-hmm. Great. Enjoy your fantasy. What are we talking about in today? We're just talking about a bunch of computers that are much faster and at a greater scale. And we can talk to them and they can talk to us in our language rather than us figuring out, how do we say this in 10111000? So we can say, hey, can you format this Riverside audio thing so it works out this way and does this, rather than you having to go in and code that. And it can do that. Great, right? You can ask it questions and it can answer it in your own language, but in the background, it's not some super genius thing. It's just a bunch of computers in some data centers sucking up a bunch of water, just being like 101101101000001. So I think the less we know about AI, the more we are likely to sort of attribute magical properties or fall in love with it. There's been studies that have been done on this. When the reality is, it is just a better computer that's good at doing better computer stuff. So if there's stuff that you do on a computer that takes time and sucks, it's going to make that stuff easier and faster to do. I don't know how to make a website. Now I could if I wanted to, right? What I would say is the more that we use AI, the more valuable the analog things will become. The more that a business uses AI, the more valuable things like networking or relationships or their physical products and spaces are going to be, because everyone will be using AI. But where do people connect? Where do people respond? What emotionally grabs people? It's still the real tangible stuff. And it's the stuff that, speaks to us in our way. And so it just raises the bar on the analog.
So what are some practical things that you would suggest people try to just see if they can live without some of this digital overload?
Find something you already love to do online. Do you love to take photos? Do you love to listen to music? Do you love to play games? Great. There is an analog equivalent of all of those things. So go out and get yourself a cheap turntable, right? You can get one for $100. You can probably get one given to you on Facebook Marketplace or somewhere from a relative for less, for free, right? Go out and get some records. You don't have to go buy fancy new, super limited edition ones. You can pick up some at a garage sale or someone will have some, right? Just do that. Listen to music. Try and see what it's like. Try going to a record store. Even if you don't buy, just go and browse and see what that feels like, right? If you like reading news online, go pick up a newspaper, your local paper, whatever it is, and see what that's like to actually sit with something in a park, in the backyard, in your bed, and just have some coffee and take it in. See what that feels like to read from start to finish or flip through it or whatever.
They might be surprised how it makes them feel.
Yeah. If you're into gaming, if you're into online gaming, multiplayer gaming, go to a board game cafe. There's now one pretty much in every community, or get your hands on some board games and play them with people. Get a deck of cards, get some dominoes, right? Get together with people, go play chess, see what that feels like. Because the whole point is it's actually not about the game. It's about the interactions with the other people. Find the way to get back in touch with tactile analog reality and see whether you like it or not. And if you don't like it, try something else. And if that doesn't work and you're happier being on your phone or your screen all the time, okay, great. At least you tried it, right? At least you had that experience.
Are you encouraged by the fact that people are talking about this now?
I have been looking at this for nearly 20 years. When I first started noticing, that there was something going on. That at the very time that smartphones were becoming available, people were gravitating back toward non-digital technologies and goods that everybody assumed would disappear. Right. And that trend has continued steadily and unabated, and with younger and younger people sort of driving it, not just in the United States and here in Canada, but all over the world. I don't think it's going to slow down. I don't think it is going away anytime soon. And I think that the more we use digital technology, the more it becomes central to our lives. Now with AI, the greater the value of this is, and the more apparent that becomes. And so when I hear people talking about it, when I see people talking about it, when I saw the other day, someone who was probably 15 years old walking around taking photos with a film camera, I can't help but smile because I know that the future is going to be okay, that we remain grounded to who we are, no matter how much we try to move ourselves away from that.
For a guy who's connected way too much to technology, this has been like a therapy session, and I appreciate that. So thanks so much for your time, and I'm sure this will only get more fascinating as we move forward.
Amen.
That's it for today. Like and subscribe to us here, and find us over on Substack for field notes. We're also on Apple and Spotify. So stop the doom scrolling and join us, for your mental health.